Welcome to Introduction to Scratch. In this course, we're going to cover the basics of the programming language known as Scratch. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to need to access the actual Scratch site. And we can do this by going to scratch.mit.edu. The first thing that'll pop up is going to be the Scratch home page. For later videos, when we end up creating projects, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create an account so that we can save our progress and save our projects to use later on. We can do this by clicking the Join Scratch button and creating a username and password. However, if you've already created an account, what we're going to go to is we're going to click the Sign In account. As you can see, I've already created an account, so I'm just going to sign in. Now the homepage changes slightly, but up here the bar is still exactly the same. What we're going to do is we're going to click the Create button, so it allows us to create a new project. There are a lot of different aspects to this project. First, up here, we're going to edit the title of the project, and in this case, we're just going to call it Test. Next, on the right-hand side, we see a kind of square here. Inside of this box, this is going to be our screen for the project. Inside of the screen, we have our little cat that's moving around with our cursor. So by clicking on it, holding on it, and dragging it around, I can move the cat. This cat is actually going to be called a sprite, and sprites are just the characters that we use in Scratch. Down here, we have the option to choose a sprite. And over here, the first button, the magnifying glass, it's going to allow us to choose a sprite from Scratch's huge library of different avatars. All of these can be used as sprites. For now, we're just going to stick with the cat and click back. We can also paint our own sprite. By using these different tools in Scratch, I can draw a line here, and it makes a new sprite that allows us to work with. To delete a sprite, what I can do is click this trash can button here. The next main part of the project is going to be the background, or the stage. Over here, we have the option to click on the stage, and just like with the sprites, we have the option to choose a backdrop, paint something. There are also two other options for both of them, which allows us to pick a surprise one from the library. By clicking on this, we can see the entire library of backdrops. And the other option is just to upload a backdrop from our computer. Now, as you can see, currently I have the stage selected. But in order to code our sprite, I'm going to need to click on this. Over here, there are a couple different options. Now, you might have noticed earlier when I moved my sprite around, the X and Y coordinates here changed. In our little screen or a stage here, we can imagine an invisible plane of X and Y that allows us to move our sprite around and lets us basically demonstrate and find X and Y. The center of the plane is going to be somewhere around the middle. The other options we have are to basically not show or to show our sprite. To change the size, so if I were to turn this to 200, it makes our sprite 200 pixels wide. And then we can also pick the direction of where it's facing. Sprite is really handy because it allows us to use this arrow to show directly what direction our cat is facing. We can also make our sprite turn around, or what we can do is we can lock it in place so it doesn't allow us to turn it. On the left-hand side here, we have a couple of different tabs. The first one is Code, and as you can see, it's categorized into various colors. The first color, the one we're going to be using most often, is the motion. So the way Scratch works is we can click, hold, and drag our little blocks over to this giant empty space here, where we're going to actually hold our code. If I click on this, it actually applies whatever this says to our cat. So since we're programming inside of the white space for the sprite, everything we do here is going to affect this sprite. When I click on this, the sprite is going to move 10 steps. When I click on this, it's going to turn 15 degrees. Right now it's not because we've locked it in place. So I need to unlock it by allowing it to unlock by clicking this. And what happens when I click this is it's going to turn 15 degrees. I'm going to move it back for now and leave it that way. The next main category is the looks section. If I drag this purple block over here and I click on it, it's going to make our cat say hello for 2 seconds. Scratch is pretty easy in understanding the actual blocks. For example, this block is just going to make it say hello. This block is going to switch its costume, and so on. Wait, switching costumes? Over here, the second tab we have is the costumes. This current sprite we have is automatically equipped with 2 different costumes. So all of these blocks here that say switch costume or next costume, if I drag it over here and I click on it, it switches the costume to the second costume here. Just like with creating a new sprite, I can choose costumes. For now, we're going to leave our cat back to its original position. The third main category we have is sound. And sound, if I drag it over here and click on it, the sound we have here is the meow sound. And this sound is here because it's in this sounds tab. So the sound that we play here is exactly the same as the sound we play here. I can also upload and pick new sounds, and Scratch has a huge library of sounds. If I just hover over one, there's a large variety of different ones we could use. If I click on one, I add it to my library, and by playing it, I can adjust it to be faster, slower, louder, softer, and so on. But what happens is when I add a sound here, it allows us to change this here. So by adding the sound chord into our sound tab, it becomes an option to change on the code. And when I click on this, it plays that same sound. The fourth main tab we have is the events. Notice that there's something slightly different about the events tab. Now with other tabs we had, motion or looks, what I can do is I can drag it over here and I can snap these 2 blocks together so that they fit. When I click on either one of them and drag them, both of them move together. So when I click on this, both of these actions are going to happen. But with events, the top of the entire thing is curved, meaning you can't add it to the bottom of anything. Meaning you can't add it to the bottom of any code blocks. What I can do is I can move it to the top. And what this does is it's going to say when a certain event happens, we're going to run all of these code. So when the green flag is clicked, it's going to move 10 steps and say hello. Well, in order to get this to work, I need to actually click the green flag. Now, why is this useful? See, if I were just to take this off and click on it myself, it'd do the exact same thing. By using event blocks, it's really useful because when I say grab a new sprite, let's say the flying cat, and I bring it over here. First of all, with this new sprite, the code is completely new. The code I use for this sprite and for this sprite are totally different. But what if I want to make them both say hello and move 10 steps at the same time? Well, that's why we use event blocks. With Scratch, we can copy and paste blocks by basically dragging it over, and I can take these blocks and I can drag them into the cat flying blocks. When this happens, we basically copy and paste the code here. So for the sprite 1, we're going to have this, and when I click on cat flying, we also have this same code because we copied and pasted. By having this event block of when flag clicked, when I click on the green flag, we can have both of the cats doing this at the same time, which is really useful. The fifth tab we have is the control tab, and as you can see, there are a bunch of really interesting and different things. So for the control tab, we will get into this more in later projects. The last 4 different categories we're not going to get into for now, but we will in future projects. For now, play around in your test Scratch game. That's all for this introduction video. We'll cover more as we go along with projects. Thanks for watching.